I'm looking for a solution. Then, of course, I'm going to move in again. When you were talking before, you did make mention of something important, which is writing, how you use writing. And that sort of prompt me into the question. Because right now, I am writing a series of books, the storytelling series for
Yes.
African diaspora.
Yes.
Now, uh, this series, of course, is looking at how we can use storytelling to build ourselves as a people and also to leverage it in our business. But as you were talking just now, I'm trying to think how could we use storytelling to heal ourselves, even because storytelling can also heal. That now you know who you are by storytelling. In fact, I remember in one of the series, because there are actually 5 books,
Hmm.
three of them have been published, so we are working on the other two. I did make mention of Africa, saying that how do you think our ancestors were able to survive if they didn't know the story of where they are coming from? By that I mean, in a very crude state, they needed to know where is water,
Hmm.
they needed to know where is food. Not that alone, but they also needed to know where is the danger to avoid.
That's right.
All this is coming through storytelling because for generation and generation, they have encountered different things in that piece of land. And if we have a minimum understanding of human history, we should know that at one point in time, humanity was living only in Africa. Only in Africa.
Hmm.
There was no other human being anywhere in the world because all of us are actually coming from Africa.
Africa. Hmm.
So, which means these people that were living at the time needed to know a lot to be able to survive because they were not alone. There were many other animals that were also living. So history and storytelling become very vital for us.
It
How could
does.
we use that in healing ourselves, knowing what have happened to us? Help me with that.
Well, the first place I think is to be able to accept or to embrace our stories. So many times we are made to feel either that our stories are shameful and do not need to be told. I don't know if it's protocol, but we see what's happening in some parts of the world now in terms of African history being told in schools to the younger ones, which can help to direct them. But separate and apart from that, one very important thing is to accept our stories as being legitimate, authentic, and a significant part of history because much of our culture, our legacy, and our heritage are maintained or passed on through storytelling. And I believe that for many of us, we think that, oh well, I don't have much to say. Who am I? I don't need to say. But it's important. It's important to teach our children how we survived particular things. It's important to teach the next generation what we did that caused us to overcome a particular experience, and some of it is going to be oral and some of it has to be documented so that legacies are preserved, history is preserved. And even if I go back to psychology, a part of the healing takes place as we get it out. So, a part of our own healing, sometimes the insight comes when we are telling others our stories. Sometimes the revelations come when we begin to speak our stories. And we can be, I always say, we are the sum total of all our experiences. And so when we tell our stories, we are integrating all our experiences. Because those parts which were not maybe so pleasant, those parts which were victorious, those parts which were more comely, and we are able to integrate and to understand that our resilience, our ability to keep going on, our ability to be here came out of all of what? we would have experienced or gone through. And sometimes, even when we're having pain, I tell you that even writing, for me, when I have gone through some of the most painful experiences in my life, like a breakup of a relationship or a loss, it is in the writing that I experience some healing. It is in the writing that I get catharsis. It is in the sharing my story with others that they say, oh my gosh. And it encourages, it builds up. And guess what? You come in a way recognizing that your experiences are valid and valuable, and it makes you want to keep doing. So I encourage writing as an expressive art, as a healing art, storytelling as a point of healing for everybody, barring none.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Thank you. You see, as we are talking about storytelling, because essentially that is what we do here. You see, when we started just now, I told you to tell me about your story,
Yes.
your history, your background, where you are coming from, because we are passionate about it. As people of African diaspora, it is important that we tell our story, and of course, this story is not just for the sake of making noise.
No.
It is because it is absolutely important. It is absolutely important. Now, I want to go back again to the ancient because I want people to understand the importance of story. Okay, I made mention of our ancestor having to know where the food is, having to
Right.
know where the water is, having to know where the danger is to avoid. Of course, this I mentioned in the storytelling series. But again, let's look at food, for example, just for a moment.
Mhm.
How could we know that this particular thing could be eaten? Because we don't eat everything. And now, food that we eat, if you eat the right proportion, you will live. If you eat the wrong proportion, even of the same food, you will die.
You will, right.
A good example, if you take the right amount of sugar and you eat it, it will be looking very sweet in your mouth. Or let's say salt, for example, it will be good.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the wrong proportion of it, say maybe for example you feed a cup with sugar. I'm drinking tea now. Maybe for example you take a cup like this and fill it with salt and drink it, you will die.
Right.
Now the question is, how do we know that? It is true story, true experiment, because for years, for thousands of years, people have been doing certain things that make them to understand that this is good, this is bad.
Right.
This you cannot do it because the consequence is that.
Right.
So now, so that even when the European wanted to come up with their fabulous story that Africa have no story, they didn't know what they were saying. Absolutely, they have no idea what they were saying. Because if the Africa didn't have history, all of them would be, in fact, European would not even meet anybody in Africa. Because
That's right.
history is what keeps you alive.
Yes. Yes.
It helps you to identify what is a danger in the forest so that you don't go to meet the lion and say, hey, my friend, let's joke. You don't play with the lion. How do you know that? Through history.
History.
Your ancestors have told you that those type of animal, you don't play with them because they have
Right.
their own way up. They will eat you
They're
raw.
dangerous. They're dangerous. But Abehi,
Yeah, please
you've
go.
just touched on something that's so critical. So I'm saying that you've made such a significant point. When you speak about how do we know which foods are good for us and which aren't, how do we know the proportions to be consumed in a healthy way versus the proportion not to be? How do we know which spots are dangerous versus which spots are safe? How do we know what is medicinal versus what is not? And it speaks to storytelling in a simple and profound way, in that it speaks to storytelling from the point of survival right to the point of conquest. So when we tell our stories serve so many different purposes. Our stories serve to educate. Our stories serve to empower. Our stories serve to heal. Our stories serve to inform. Our stories set the foundation for stories to come. So it is really so very important. And thank you for even, sharing that again. I'm sure you have said it before. That it is just so important. How do we know